Welcome back to part 2. Well, I guess the votes are in, and you can see that I've started disassembly. How many times have you seen me or someone else go to disassemble something, and when they try to take the chassis out of the case, they forgot to take the knobs off? So that's the first thing we do, is we take the knobs off. What's kind of funny is these main knobs. You can look how nasty, but these just slide on the tuning capacitor and air condenser, and so I guess that's okay, but they're real flimsy. I think I could probably break that if I just mash, but I'll want to go take these right away and wash these up and clean these up and set them aside, and I won't have to do that later. The other little thing is this Q-tune, this QX tune. It's got a little indicator now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go buy a bunch of cheaper Ziploc bags and put them in there and label them and what have you. Now the other knobs, which should clean up nicely, some of them have a mark, and but the QC tune that I just pulled off does not. Well, I take that back, it does. I just didn't see it, so it doesn't matter. So of course, here is the antenna trim knob, and the text I've read says this is red, and maybe it was at one time, but it looks just like a brown phenolic one to me, so it could have some red tint to it. So, but I'm going to mark my bags, take my time, and I've said in my comments on the previous one that sometimes making the video takes away from what I'm doing here, and I'm going to try not to do that. Not going to rush it. I'm just going to take my time, and these particular strips, they're painted, and I don't have any way to reproduce that, so I'm just have to take care in cleaning these, because I don't want to take the lettering off, but I think they need to be cleaned up quite a bit. But people have spoken. We're going to take this thing all apart and clean it up, refurbish it, and put it back. Build it back like it was a new kit. This was taped on with masking tape, which is always exciting stuff. It's in pretty good shape. It's got, we may have to touch that up with some black paint on the back. I think that is I think it's been scratched or something there. Yeah, no. One good thing about old tape, sometimes it comes off and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not quite sure how this was attached to start with. We have a tendency for these tabs to break, so I don't know. We're definitely going to have to take them off. So I don't know. Did somebody try to glue these at one point in time? I just don't know. But you would think that this should be centered up, but there should be some mechanism. What we'll look at doing in the future is getting some sort of rubber or foam that will fill in this gap between the edge of this escutcheon and this dial, and maybe gluing or attaching the foam to it, and then just sticking it to this part after the fact. But as you can see, that is kind of scarred up or cut up. I think we can probably take some black paint and fill that in there, and that should be good. But let's look at the front here. One more. Okay, looks like bolt or screws will take these strips off, and we should be able to just have a panel that we can address. May have to paint these lines back on once we paint this, but I feel like this is what we're going to have to paint. We're going to have to, especially this particular part, but the matching this, it's not going to happen. So one more step. Alright, took these off. What I did is I bent the top ones and pulled them out. I felt like that I would be better off with the bottom ones. We may end up gluing some of these anyway. It probably needs a touch of glue just to keep them from rattling around. But I bent the top ones, and they bent and got it out this time. However, wasn't so fortunate with this one. Both of the top ones broke, but I felt like if I had the bottom ones, it would hold it in, and then we can glue the top. I don't think we're going to be able to do anything other than we'll figure something out. A drop of glue will probably keep that in. So we can take these off, and then we can get to cleaning this and everything like that. Now, whether we do that now or later, I may just leave these that way for now till I get ready to clean and paint this. At least I won't lose these, bend these, or what have you. That's where I'm going with that. Let's go after this dial. None of this is glass. All this is plastic. I believe all we're going to have to do is we can probably take these 4 screws out, and this will come off, and then we'll have these brackets that we will have to take off. So let's take the front off first, and then we'll take these brackets off. Alright, excuse the buzz of my light and the air conditioner going, but it's pretty warm outside. I took the ground screw off here and the ground screw off here. We'll unclip this light, and since this wire here is extremely long, we will just come over here. Sorry, I'm not the cameraman. I'm breaking in a new cameraman. So anyway, I'm just going to reach right in there, and I'm going to cut it about, you can see I cut it that far, and I should have plenty of wire to go back with that. And in theory, all of this should just lift out. I don't know how that got down in there, but you know, it does. So there's all the lamps, all in one package. Wires are in good shape. We can clean them up, dress those wires, and should be able to go back as one unit. What I'm going to plan on doing is soldering this wire, these 2 wires, and there should be like 2 screws under the bottom here. I think I see 2, and this is not attached to this bracket at all, and it should just come right out. With this one, maybe a little bit different. A couple of wires here, one here, and then I can take this bracket off here, and this whole unit, and I'm sure there's some screws on the bottom. and there's another screw, another connection there. Unsolder that, and that should lift right out. So in just a few minutes I should have those lifted out. I don't think they thought this one all the way through. You take these two screws out, and then there's one that's like right in there, and I think I can get it with this little bitty screwdriver and turn it. It's going to come out, I believe. But I think, of course, you know, putting it in wasn't a problem because that was probably mounted on the very first. And but they did leave a gap there where, yeah, I think you can probably work it out if you have to. Looks like I'm going to have to, or wait a little while. Success. Got that out. That should clean up nicely. Put the screws back in it so I wouldn't lose them. Okay, I desoldered the wires here, but this is going to work out smashingly, I'm sure, because it's under the band switch board, which this is going to have to wait. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull the tubes, and I will go ahead and check them, and that way we can find out if we need anything, and we can get them cleaned up and get them in a safe place. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 tubes, which that's what I said. Two screws missing on the transformer. I hope they just ran out of screws. But anyway, we'll pull the tubes, and that's the OB2. That's the voltage regulator. I identify that right off the bat. So let me get these tubes out and we'll go from there. Okay, tubes are out. These were pretty stuck. So what I did is I took a little deoxit and sprayed under each tube, and it came right out. So I don't want to damage these boards at all. So take a look at this. 1957. So yeah, late 50s. I thought it was right around that time frame. I've tested and cleaned up all the tubes, and all the tubes were good. I think what I'm going after next is I've already taken, if you remember that modification or whatever, that those wires, I just clipped those out, got those up out of the way. I'm going to get this band switch board out of the way. We'll have to take this nut off. That's probably the last thing. I want it to be supported. This switch here is not connected in any way. The wire, there's a couple of wires attached here with look like a ground. Now that ground goes to that switch, so that should come in one piece. A piece of coax and 3 or 4 wires there. Flipping this up a little bit, coming through the chassis is that wire was connected to that terminal. I took it loose, and the tuning condenser wires, they're disconnected. So I think that's all the wires that's coming through the chassis. So I think I disconnect the rest of these wires and take these screws out, loosen that, and hopefully that unit will pull out. I had forgotten the calibrator tube, so I pulled it out. I've got to test it, if you saw it in the earlier video. I've gotten all the wires, I think, disconnected, so I'm ready to disconnect this, and then take these screws out and hopefully lift this out. And since I'm not using a tripod, I'm going to use both hands. I'll show you what the results are. I may come back crying after I break this. Okay, this little bushing goes down through on this, and actually that's what holds this coupling. I loosened these two screws that comes off this. This is a coupling, and I guess this is some sort of flexible deal, pushing in or whatever, because it has these, you can see, I don't know what they're called, but they're like springs to absorb the shock. Of course, these, I loosened those, and that shaft has come out like that. And of course, there's the nut that holds all that on. So now that's shouldn't have any problem with that. Now these 6/8 screws, this should come out. What I ran into is pretty straightforward. There's a couple of washers underneath this these capacitors. There was a nut. As you can see, there was a nut. There's a screw coming here. Not sure what it is yet, but I had to take that nut off to lift it up. And there is a yellow wire on that capacitor right there that I've got to take off. So I think as soon as I unsolder that, I think this will come off. We will see. That lifted out. This is the other side. There was that nut. That's just a stud that comes up there to hold this board down through that hole there. As you can see, a lot of the coils on this side. There's really nothing here. Well, I had said that the filter caps were under there. As you can see, I was wrong. Hey, look, we've got handprints and fingerprints in here from 60 years ago, 60 plus years ago. Isn't that cool? That is just cool. Now we're going to submit those to the FBI, and we'll solve a cold case. Probably not. Anyway, I found the filter cap. Filter cap is up here on this board. Duh. I was expecting something a little bigger, but there's two 20 microfarads capacitors in this can. So we'll figure out how we're going to replace that and or restuff this. But it's good. I think I can get this capacitor off now. Well, you should have clean access to it. It's getting pretty bare. Bagged up the screws to the band switch board. Got this tuner cap out. Getting a little bit closer. Two screws held the crystal calibrator in and unsoldered the wires from various locations. This is the rat's nest here with the wires and what have you. We'll just take them out one by one till we get ready to take this board out. May not look like it, but I've taken loose all the wires to the circuit board. Some of them they were disconnected from the components. So I think I can go on top side and take those screws out and lift the board out. We will see. The main circuit board screws and hardware, and there's the board. I can see 2 electrolytics here, 3, 4 electrolytics, and another one, 5 electrolytics. So we'll have to look about getting those. And most of these are disc capacitors. We'll check the resistors. Big thing is we'll have to clean this up real good. Probably go ahead and pull those wires off. But let's look underneath. Okay. Few components: filter choke, S-meter, potentiometer. Look like an output transformer. The front panel controls. That cable. I'm gonna probably try to use the same cable, but I'm gonna dress it up a little bit, maybe shorten it, and see if we can't find some way to fashion it in there. The transformer should be almost out. There's the primary right there on the white wires. So other than the primary, that transformer can come out. So let me go ahead and take those out. Okay. There's each of the boards. The main chassis and the sub chassis, I guess. Everything is stripped out. So I think this is probably going to be the end of part 2. Let's see. Got a box full of parts here, along with the transformer, the tubes, and then I have another box of stuff with some bags. So got it all together. And so the next thing in part 3, going to clean up the chassis, clean up the boards, and basically just clean up the front, the knobs, clean all the connections on the components, test those while they're out, test the boards, make sure the resistors and capacitors, of course we're going to change the electrolytics while we're here. We know the thing had worked if I haven't messed it all up. So work on that plastic face. I'm going to try to do some polish and some of the Novus creams that to smooth it up and smooth it out and shine it up a little bit, get some of the scratches out, do the best I can with that. And then that'll be part 3. Probably part 4 we'll start building it back once we get everything cleaned up, tested, refurbished, and ready to go back. So that's going to do it for part 2. So from Larry, from the hills of Tennessee, thanks for watching.